Greetings! Today is a new day to learn about something new. Today specifically, I and my groupmates will be talking about the topic of writing a research paper. Now, it isn't far-fetched to claim that most students shy away from the research paper. Research by nature entails tedious preparation, long hours of work, and meticulous writing. You need to know what you want to research and have it narrowed down so you would not have to spend unnecessary time on matters that do not help your research topic. But first, what is a research? Or how is a research done? Well, according to the dictionary, it is the systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources to establish facts and reach new conclusions. How it is done is by the specific questions asked and systematic investigations that help formulate good research. Now, without further ado, let us dive into the world of writing a research paper. So the first step into writing your research paper is to, of course, plan your research. Now, there are many different ways on how you can start your research. To start this off, you can first choose a subject you are familiar with. Being familiar with your chosen subject can give you a boosted advantage. From here, you already know where and what sources you can start with and follow up with your insights and assumptions about the subject. Being familiarized with the topic is better than starting research of something you have less knowledge on. It will take quite some time to figure out which material and sources best suit the research. A general good example of subjects that you may be familiar with may be your family, your friends, the city you live in, maybe the neighborhood, and maybe even the state or country that you are in. Another way than choosing a subject that you are familiarized with is to try something new. Try something new that piques your interest. As the famous line goes, curiosity kills the cat. Well, maybe not in this context, but rather fuels your interest to start your research paper. Get out of the place that you call the comfort zone and start exploring another subject that you haven't tried before. Maybe you would like to research on a movie that recently captured your interests, or perhaps a book, or maybe even the author that made the book. Let those curiosities go wild, while this will allow you, the researcher, to be open to a new subject that can start your research paper. So now moving on, we can finally browse through the available research materials. In this part, you're required to look into different materials in means of finding what is related to your topic. Given the time that is given, depending on how much time you have to find the most convenient, easiest, yet informative research on the topic. A common material everyone uses nowadays is the internet. But do not let this be your only available material. There are tons of others than just the internet. If so, try checking your local libraries if they have any information on the topic you chose or search on. The more time you spend on these research materials, the more and more informations you can grab about your topic. So now after all that thinking and all that planning for your research paper, you may now move on to the next step of writing your research paper. Finding primary resources. This type of material is known to be very useful and accurate. Unlike books, whose info is made by the author, primary sources give you materials that you can accurately acquire. Some known methods of acquiring primary resources are through observations and interviews. Through the mode of observation, this does not use too much effort, for in the mode of observation, this requires you to open up all your five senses, which is the sight, hearing, smell, taste, and feeling, and to put them to good use. Using these five senses, you can observe every detail of your own surrounding. But of course, there can be so many things happening all at once. That is why it is suggested for you to use a paper, or even better, a notebook, to write down those specific sources from your observation. This now serves as your primary source because you have experienced it with your own presence. Still on the subject of observation, there is a form of observation that can be used, which is called ethnography. According to the website of the Department of Sociology, Ethnography or field research is a sociological method that explores how people live and make sense of their lives with one another in a particular place. What this means is that the researcher, you, will have to live with the research subject and that you have to go through their daily experience to observe how it works, meaning that the researcher will have to live under the same roof as the subject, from what they eat, what are their manners in life, and even what time they sleep. Ethnography is a specific type of observation that makes the researcher experience the lifestyle of the research subject. Now next, we move on to another example of primary source, interviews. Now, according to the wiki, it is essentially a structured conversation where one participant asks questions and the other provides answers. This type of primary source requires you to interact with other people to gain the sources. Primary sources can effectively come from the people themselves than just observing. So in interviewing, here are some tips to start with when interviewing for your research. The first step is how you will plan and set up your interview. When planning, you must know which person you will be interviewing that will provide information on the research you are writing about. Do keep in mind that you are asking the interviewee a favor, meaning you'll have to adjust to the person's schedule and mark down which date the interview will be held. As the interviewer, you must prepare questions beforehand and focus on the main questions to avoid extending the interviewee's time. It is important to know that when you ask these questions, you need to know if this will provide enough data for the research you are writing on. And lastly, is not to ask too many follow-up questions that might possibly extend the time of the interview. Asking too much might not even help your paper anymore. And lastly, another tip in interviewing is note taking. This is essential in remembering details that the interviewee has said during the entire interview. Through pens and papers are enough for note taking, but having a tape recorder will be most helpful in getting down details that you are unable to jot down during the whole session. And of course, it is wise enough to let the person know that you will be recording during the whole time so that they will be aware of the method that you chose on how you're going to write down their answers. And that, for the most part, are some tips into considering when holding an interview with another person. And now for the next step in writing your research paper.
Before we look into finding sources in a library, let's first define what a secondary source is. So in essence, a secondary source is anything that summarizes, evaluates, or interprets primary sources. If a source gives you an overview of background information or presents another researcher's ideas on your topic, it's probably a secondary source. So what can count as a secondary source if you're wondering? Well, academic books, journal articles, reviews, essays, and textbooks, these are all examples. Now let's say you've made your way into the Library of Congress somehow, the biggest library in the world, and want to just find a single book. You don't know where to find this single book, so you look around wondering if there are people that can help you navigate. You decide to take matters into your own hands and try to find the book yourself. This is the unfortunate problem that many people have faced when wandering the halls of a library. Fortunately enough, a system has been set in place for whenever someone is placed in this exact scenario. We call this the Dewey Decimal System, developed by librarian/educator Melville Dewey. In 1876, this system is used to organize and keep track of books. This way, even if you'll not find the exact book you'd be looking for, you'd at least find the area you need to be in to find it. So once you've used the system to find your book, it would be smart to use an encyclopedia to gain a proper understanding of your research topic. These books are very, very important to any library as they provide general information and specific details of any given topic. Let's say you want to use a book as a secondary source. Sometimes this is only when you require background information and related research on a topic, or when you want to add depth to a research topic or put your topic in context with other important issues. On the other hand, unlike books, which are usually somewhat outdated, periodicals, newspapers, and magazines give the latest information on a topic. So you can always rely on this when it comes to needing information with solid claims. You can also use the internet, as it is the largest database for information on any given subject where printed materials fall short of. Though it's crucial to have a connection when using the internet as a source, it's been a lot more convenient and time saving when looking for important details to your research.
First is the view the URL. Call it the Uniform Resource Locator. It is the term of accessing the web page through the internet, as well as you can also find and access anywhere through the internet. And the last part of the URL is where you see the .com, .org, or .net are called the top level domain. Second is the question the author. So basically, questioning the author is a strategy that engages students actively with a text, rather than reading and taking information from a text. The QTA strategy encourages students to ask questions of the author and the text through online. And forming their questions, students learn more about the text within the site. Third is the detailed info, accuracy, and grammar. The information according to the detailed info and accuracy is to keep an eye to the exquisite appearances that tell the gist of all the information given to the written guides or the books you have read or the journals written some details in it. And lastly, the timeliness. Timeliness shows its particular publishing dates that are on time. The site's sources may come up soon to show in the user's research paper that his or her sources are relevant up to date. But if it isn't shown, most users must try to compare and contrast on the online article with other sources through the websites you got into. Next topic will be the making of bibliography. So what is working bibliography? A working bibliography is a list of all the sources that everyone can come through during their research. It is necessary or important to see and jot down the notes, which is too important where it is located in the library. But whenever you read them, there's always a way we can guide to the sources. You can manage to appear them in the research paper whenever you need it to. Also, the final bibliography could have many more sources you can go through that are cited or even less. The next topic is the plagiarism. To define plagiarism, it is a term that is both consciously and unconsciously copying someone's work, and as well as claiming as your own without permission or citations. It will be considered as a form of dishonesty, and it will raise the issue of the rights of the property. Here are the common types of plagiarism that are direct, self, mosaic, and accidental plagiarism. So letter A, direct plagiarism. It is a verbatim copy of any parts of source you own for your research paper, but without such kind of necessary placements like punctuation and or quotation marks, bibliographies, and much more. Letter B, self-plagiarism. It is a use of your old or previous work that you can pass it to the instructor as a new submission, but without knowledge or critical thinking that you shouldn't use, or you might get involved as you resubmitted your previous submitted works that you have already made in the past. If so, you need to have consent from all of your teachers in front of the class. Letter C, mosaic plagiarism. It is also called patch writing. It means that the author trying to initialize a paraphrase the source into his or her paperwork, but it remains original or a sentence structure. Letter D, accidental plagiarism. This plagiarism is an attempt to rewrite or rephrase the other words that you copy that is done unintentionally. An author or a writer or mainly forgot their requirements, for example, due to their carelessness of their work.
When it comes to any research, to show that you've truly done proper analysis and fact finding, you'll have to cite your sources, and you'll have to cite them in a way that matters. There are many certain guides that you can follow when it comes to citing information, but the most effective and commonly used is the APA. The APA Citation Guide uses an author year system of citation to ensure that the sources referenced by a writer can be tracked easily and by anybody. This is one of the major referencing and citation styles and is mostly used for education, psychology, and science writings. There are different formats used for different types of sources, like when citing a book, magazine, newspaper, or something online. Though you can't copy the sources you're using into your research paper word for word, you can borrow and appropriately convey its ideas. This can be done through clever use of paraphrasing, summarizing, and quoting. When paraphrasing, it's important that you read the source paragraph at least twice, as you are essentially rewriting all the info conveyed in the paragraph in your own words. But while paraphrasing involves rewriting an entire paragraph, summarizing has a lot to do with only getting the idea of the source material. Because of this, summarizations are significantly smaller than when paraphrasing. And finally, coding. This is done by acknowledging an idea taken from another source and placing this idea inside quotation marks, where you'll then use the source as a bibliographic entry at the end of the paper.
As I conclude this video, I would like to thank you for watching till the end, and hopefully that you got to learn something today about writing a research paper. Let me know in the comments down below on what you think on writing a research paper. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. And we'll see you on the next video.